This is part of kind of like the museum's outreach program. It is free and open to the public. All you have to do is make an appointment. And the museum owns just shy of 40,000 photographs now, and probably about half that many prints and drawings. They're all stored behind that wall. So anything that you see on the website, you can make an appointment and come here to see it. And Jason, the person that helped us in the elevator, he's the manager of the print room. So we'll start from over there. And when doing the research for the war photography exhibition, a few things really surprised me. One is one of our categories. Our exhibition catalog was done in the order of war. So it starts with instigation. And then in that little chapter of instigation, you see what instigated wars in every culture and many, many time periods. And so there's no photograph that documents the beginning of a war, because nobody knows it's going to happen. We have very, very few examples of that. Well, one of them is that photograph in the upper left, taken by a Japanese pilot from a Zero, showing the first moments of the attack on Pearl Harbor. So if you look at it carefully, the Oklahoma is already hit, and you can see the trails of the torpedoes going into the other battleship, and you can see the radiating blast waves in the water from that picture. So that is an extremely rare photograph in general, but also what it depicts is incredibly hard to capture in terms of conflict. Our collection and my knowledge is very one of the strengths is indeed World War II, and that's a lot of stuff we'll be talking about. The one below it is by a Russian photographer. His name is Dmitry Boltermans. And a lot of times when I look at pictures, I try to picture how the photographer took the photograph. And how is it that you're able to take a picture of conflict. There's a famous type of picture for conflict, which is just referred to as over the top. And that is the moment a soldier or anybody goes from safety into harm's way. It's over the berm, over the wall, over the something, and they're referred to as over the top pictures. But the photographer is in a safe place when that picture is taken. He's not on the other side of the wall, taking the face of the guy coming over. He's taking the picture of the back of the person going over the wall. The Boltermans, the photographer is safe in a trench. He's able to sit there and photograph probably multiple pictures of people jumping over the trench that he's standing in. So that's how that picture was made. But one of the things that makes it so compelling is that it's got a little bit of blur to it. It has the jackets are waving in it, and there's some, that's the shutter speed. The shutter speed was too slow to freeze the action that was happening in front of them. It could have been on purpose, it could have been lack of light, it could have been the only way that those pictures were able to be taken. Regardless, it was chosen as the cover of our book because of the blur. It adds an element to it that makes it more artful, that makes it go beyond just a news picture. And that's one of the things that we had to make sure was that everything up here and that we included in our show had to be a great picture that stood on its own outside of other things. Otherwise, we thought our project would fail. I'm going to skip this one for a second because it relates to something that we're going to look over here. But this was one of my favorite pictures. It's by a Dutch photographer named Koos Orthros or something like that. I can't pronounce it. Orthros, I can't pronounce it. No. And it's a genuine spy picture. So those are other things that are very rare. The photographer has his camera hidden in his jacket. The person in front of him is working in cahoots with the photographer, and their goal is to photograph German troops moving through the city. So that's what you see in the background. They have to keep track of how many troops were in a truck and how many went by. And this is part of the system of the Dutch resistance that helped, a photograph that helped the Dutch resistance. The one next to it is by Wayne Miller, who went on to be an important photographer in New York City in the 50s. And was part of one of the great photography exhibitions in the 1950s called Family of Man. But one of my pictures I gravitate towards were the ones where people were helping other people. And this is one of the great pictures of that from World War II. It's the pilot being pulled out of an airplane after he's being shot. The plane's been shot. I happen to know that that person, he offered to switch places with another person in that same plane, and that person was killed. So if they had gone with their designated positions in that plane, he wouldn't have made it, but he did it. This is the picture of him being pulled out of that cockpit. The one next to it, does anybody know this picture? D-Day? Yeah, it's D-Day. It's a photograph taken by Robert Capa, one of my favorites, favorite conflict photographers. And Capa was given a choice of what wave to be in when he entered, when he went ashore on D-Day. And the waves were, a wave depicted of many troops and ships. And it was recommended that he go in the second wave, which was like 2.5 hours after the first wave went through. And the theory was that the first wave would knock out as much as possible and you would have a better chance of taking pictures. Well, Robert Capa, I think he said, "I am a gambler, and I chose to go in the first wave." So he went ashore and took this picture, and he took 3 rolls of film, 35mm film, so it's 3 rolls of 36. Actually, it's probably 24, 3 rolls of 24, and got to the beach. And in his biography, he says, "And that's when it hit me. That's when I got it bad." He looked to the person next to him for comfort, who had been, the last time he looked at it, he was alive, and he looked back, the person there to comfort him was gone. And that's when he said, "I did not have to be here." And he fled, he left the beach. He woke up on a hospital ship, exhausted, with a tag on his toe that said "unknown exhaustion case." He didn't know what happened to his film, but because he fled, he did know what happened to his film. Because he fled, he had his film with him. Every other roll of film from D-Day was all given to a specific soldier, Marine, and he was taking it on a ship, and he lost his balance and dropped all the film from all the other photographers into the water. So now, the only film that exists of D-Day is by Robert Capa, and he's now in exhaustion case on a troop transport. Can't remember the name of the ship. And then we switched to, I've interviewed people who worked at Time Life at the time, and he said that word got through that D-Day just happened, and nobody knew what was happening, so the Time Life building was, he said, on fire, just lit with excitement. And then they get a telegram saying that a courier has left and has hit the States and is coming with film of D-Day to Time Life. They get more excited. Then they get one more wire, and that's when the person I'm interviewing says, and that's when he found out that the pictures were by Robert fucking Capa. So, and who was already regarded as one of the best war photographers on the living. So to have the most important battle photographed by the most important photographer was a coup. And basically the director of the film was processed fine, and the head of Time Life, spacing on his name, he said, I want those pictures on my desk now. And a guy went down and turned the heat up on the drawing cabinet, and he melted all but 11 of Robert Capa's pictures. So this is one of the 11, so it may be 13. Most of them were gone. But this is one of the few pictures that survived. That whole process of being the right photographer at the right battle at the right time, to losing all these negatives, to almost losing his, to having one of the more iconic pictures of war ever. And that's this picture taken of D-Day. It's one of the few where he turned around and put his back to the beach and photographed out at the water. Most of the other pictures he took are of the backs of troops that survived. We don't know what else he did. And so then we get to one of the more iconic photographs of all time. Yes, sir?
I just wanted to ask a question about the D-Day picture there.
Yes.
On it says it's, date June 6, 1944, but it says printed before 1954. Why is that significant?
Why is that important? That was before Robert Capa stepped on a landmine in Vietnam in 1954 and was killed. So it's important to know that it was printed in his lifetime. And again, that's very rare, that we have a print that's in his lifetime. We don't know if he printed it. Odds are against that, but it still would have been under his supervision or something like that. So that's what that means. We get to Iwo Jima, and I have a personal interest in Iwo Jima. The battleship I worked on, Battleship Texas, was there. I interviewed some of the Battleship Texas veterans that watched the flag go up from the deck of the ship. Their enthusiasm and excitement was basically transferred to me. I stood there and stood on the deck in the ship channel and tried to imagine being able to see Mount Suribachi and that flag going up and seeing what it would do to the people on the ship. I know the ship erupted in cheers and applause, and the battle was being broadcast over the chapel was broadcasting over the speakers. We're all familiar with this picture. We've all seen the raising of the flag before. Yes?
Yes.
The title is Old Glory, goes up on Mount Suribachi. So how many in this room think that this is a staged picture or fake? We've got two fakers here. Well, it's not accurate. It is not a staged or fake picture. I've written down some facts here to make sure I can just get it right. The Iwo Jima was important because of we need to stop the Japanese from being able to identify our planes from flying over there and to attack our bombers as they're coming back. But we also needed a place for our bombers to land so that we could continue to move forward and bomb Japan. So it was a crucial part of the Pacific campaign. And the Battle of Iwo Jima was the first attack that the U.S. did on Japanese soil. The Armada was 800 ships, and more than 82,000 Marine soldiers and airmen were part of the invasion force, making it become the largest amphibious invasion in history, still to this day. And that was for the Battle of Iwo Jima. And if you go to our website, and you go to the collection module, if you put in Iwo Jima, you'll see that we have about 50 photographs from Iwo Jima. Why so many? Why do we have so many pictures? Well, Iwo Jima, they knew it was going to be important, and there were 4 Marine divisions that were part of the invasion force, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marines, and each Marine division comes with 30 photographers, one movie guy, and 1 camera repairman. So that's 90 photographers that are Marine photographers that are on the island just from the amphibious force coming ashore. That doesn't count all the press. Some of the best photographers on the planet were there that day. The only one that wasn't was Robert Capa. But W. Gene Smith, and the others were there. So the invasion started on the 19th. I think I have that right. February 19th, and it wasn't until the 23rd, 4 days later, that the people on the island thought that Mount Sarbachi was secure enough to raise a flag. So they asked for permission to raise the flag, and the flag raisers went up with their flag. And they went with a photographer named Lou Lowry. Oh, we didn't pull it. And that photographer went up and photographed the flag being raised on Mount Sarbachi. And as soon as it went up, the people on the island cheered, but a ranking officer on the ground looked up and went, "Yeah, that's not big enough." And again, he went, "You find a bigger flag and get it up there. I want every goddamn Marine on this island to be able to see it." And so that's the reason why there are 2 flags. So as the first team was coming down the mountain, under sniper fire the entire time, this was not a secure, it was not secure. And as a matter of fact, one of the photographers, Bob Campbell took this picture. Came under sniper fire and had to jump off a 20-foot cliff and thought he lost his camera, but his camera was indeed fine, which is why we have that picture. So the first flag goes up. The first team is coming down. The second team has been ordered to go up. Joe Rosenthal, a photographer for the Associated Press, hears about that, asks permission if he can join them. Permission was granted. He walks with the team about a 2.5-hour trek to the top of Mount Sarbachi. They pass the first team coming down as the second team is coming up. The photographer coming down looked at Joe and said, "Don't bother, I already have the flag raising picture." Rosenthal went up anyway. One thing also to consider was this is an active kind of battleground on the top of a volcano. They walked up with a flag too. What did they put it up with? What's that pole? How they attached it to the pole? The pole is a water pipe they found up over there, and it's tied on with wire. And so that's how it got up there and everything. So when they were monkeying around trying to get the second flag on a flagpole, Joe Rosenthal was up there with himself, Bob Campbell, and another film guy, Bob Gnost, and Bill Gnost, and he was doing film, a movie camera. Joe had enough time and forethought to build a pile of rocks on the ground, and he's standing on it. He's elevated as they're getting ready in front of it. He presets his camera ahead of time. This is the exact model of camera that he took that picture with. So he had everything preset, was waiting for them to raise the flag. Bill Ganoffs is filming, walks in front of him, says, "Hey Joe, I hope I didn't get in your way." And Joe said, "No, you didn't," and looked away, and the flag went up. So Rosenthal shot from the hip without kind of looking. On a pre-set camera, though, he knew what he was doing, but he thought he missed it. So he gathered more pictures, more Marines together, and had them take this picture. So this photograph is taken just minutes after this one. These cameras only take one picture at a time. In a film canister like this, so this would have two pictures in it. You would take the picture, take that out, take the picture, put it back in, and then turn it over, and you would get the other picture. So one of these film holders probably had both of these iconic photographs in it.
This is the camera that all 90 photographers were using?
They would have been, that I researched it, and that is the model that Rosenthal had, which is why I bought that model. His looks a little differently. It's got some things that look like they're added to it afterwards, but basically the same camera. And most of the pictures from World War II are taken with a similar camera. May not be exact, but very similar. So I also think it's important to know that the flag never came down off of Mount Cervacci. They did this. And that's what this shows. This shows the first one coming down and the other one coming back up. So you can see these are the 5 Marines, one sailor that's raising it there. So what is this picture then? This is the film still from Bob Ganoff's movie film footage as he's walking by. So why is the raising of the flag such an iconic picture? Why is it so good? One, it's compositionally almost perfect, but there's a moment, a little quiet moment in the picture which I love, and that is that the Marine doing this has just let go of the flag. There's a little gap between his fingers and the pole. So it's free. It's raising. But at Ganoff's film still, he's touching the pole. He's still holding it down. So this one little moment is, for me, is one of the things that makes this picture so much better than this film still. But also, look at the horizon line that cuts right between all the soldiers. If you look at the horizon line here, it's much lower. That's because Rosenthal made a pile of rocks to stand on. He knew he didn't want that in his picture. Rosenthal was a newspaper photographer, I believe, from Chicago. I'm not sure about that. He believed that a story should be able to be told in one picture. And that really just kind of sums up his whole philosophy about that. One of my private little goals about the war show was to show that Rosenthal was not a one-hit wonder. There's a reason why his picture is so good. He was an exceptional photographer. And he took 13 or 14 pictures that day. And I tried to acquire every photograph he took that day and have failed. But this is one of the other ones that he did take, of a soldier, a Marine being rescued off to the beach. So, he's taking this photograph. It's in a film holder. His job is to take pictures. He takes that film and he gives it to a runner, and that film is delivered to Guam, taken to Guam, where there's a massive photo lab there. That is where the film is processed. It's processed by a man named Werner Schmidt, a Marine, and basically, when he processed that picture, he went, "Well, that's a nice photo," and he made a copy of it. He made a print. He wrote on the back of it, "This is the negative I made," meaning either the print or I processed this film, this negative. He trimmed it a little bit. He put it in an envelope and he mailed it home to his mom. It sat in their house for, 50 years. Then it was sold at Sotheby's at auction. Manfred Heide purchased it. and then we purchased it from Manfred Heiding, which is how it got here. So this is the first print of one of the most famous photographs of all time.
How much did purchase it for?
Secret, private.
You're talking about the,
This one.
yes. Wow.
So,
So it was the rating, huh?
on the back it says, this is the negative I made, but more importantly, it's stamped and it says passed by naval censors. And I've looked at 1,000 copies of this print, and it's the only one I've ever seen that has that stamp on the back, proving that it's wartime, unquestioned. This is the film still, the real one. The alternate one that he calls the hoorah shot, and another one that he took that day. Okay, so now that his film is in Guam, he's still taking pictures. That film gets wired to the Associated Press headquarters in New York. That's on a Friday. And then Sunday morning, on the cover of almost every major newspaper was his photograph. And it truly changed the spirit of the nation, truly transformed things. And Rosenthal had no idea. He's still taking pictures, doing his job. Meanwhile, his photograph that he's taken, that he thinks he messed up, is changed photography, has changed the minds of the American people. So it's basically, as soon as he starts hitting civilization again, where people have seen the picture, everybody's going, nice photo, nice photo. And he's assuming they're talking about the second one, this one. Because he's assumed that he missed this shot. Again, he hasn't seen anything. So in the Associated Press headquarters in New York, somebody asked him in the stairwell if he staged that picture, and he said yes. So a guy, Norman Hatch, he's the guy in charge of all the photographers on Iwo Jima, and we've interviewed him about this exact thing. He said to imagine the Associated Press building as a giant coffee filter, as a giant filter, and at the bottom of it is a radio station. And news comes in and gets filtered down, and through a series of events of multiple things that happened, the radio station aired that his photograph was a fake without verifying it, without doing their due diligence. And the next day, the Associated Press recanted it as a fake. And he spent the remainder of his life defending the photograph. And it's very clear that it's not the first flag raising, but he didn't stage it. Purists want the first flag raising, but it's not as good of a picture. If this picture didn't exist, that other picture would be fine. They would have made it to history books and whatnot, but has nothing compared to this one. And so that's the whole life of this photograph, and how it's now regarded as the most mimicked and copied photograph of all time. Google it. You can find stormtroopers raising a tree. You can find anything raising the flag. Yes, it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. And this is the very first print. This is what started all of it.
And that's the original.
And that is the original. And Norman Hatch says that, the last part of the story is that Norman was called to the Associated Press headquarters and grilled as why there were two pictures. He assured them they're both real events. First flag raising, second flag raising, this is why that had happened. And they're like, okay, better picture, we want to use this one, the Rosenthal. And the Associated Press said, sure, you can use it. It'll cost you $1 every time. Because Joe Rosenthal was not military. He worked for the Associated Press. He was denied from the military for poor eyesight. And goes on to hit that. So Norman lied a little bit and just said, well, we had a film guy you can use the film still instead of the Associated Press. You can use this for press instead of this one. And, but at that point, Norman Hatch didn't know if Ganal's film had come out yet. He had spoken ahead of knowing that information. So he, as soon as that meeting was over, he called people processing the film and found out it came out fine. But the Associated Press caved. They wanted their picture out, not the kind of poor copy of it. And they waived the fee. And that's why it's the most published photograph of all time in print. It's the raising of the flag.
And here's some of the Iwo Jima photos. Flag switching.
From the warship.
The after photo of them posing. And here's the original. Notice the hand.
And then the other one is this one, again by Lou Lowry. He's the photographer that took the first flag raising. And he's a marine photographer. This is from, it's not in your list because this is from my personal collection. And, but it represents the first prisoner of war on Iwo Jima. During the battle, a crater was formed. A marine encampment was put around it. At the bottom of the hole was a victim of the explosion, a Japanese soldier that was dead at the bottom of the hole, and he sat there for days while they made a encampment kind of around him. A grenade fell into the hole, a dead one, and it spooked the Japanese guy, and then all of a sudden the Marines realized that he was not dead. And he'd been not hiding, but he didn't want people to know he was there.
Playing possum.
Right, he was playing possum. Perfect. And so they were worried that he would he'd be booby trapped or whatnot. So they sent somebody down, a translator down there. And this is the moment where the translator's offering him a cigarette as a peace offering to let them know that we're not going to hurt you. And he became the first prisoner of war on Iwo Jima. But compositionally, I love the picture. This Z that pulls your eye all the way through the photograph. You'll see that when you all are taking pictures, you're going to want to put the subject of your picture smack dab in the middle, because that's where your focus ring is. And that's why a lot of the subject matters of beginning photographers end up being where the subject matter is dead in the center. And for the most part, that makes for a less interesting picture. And so it's great that the subject, which is the cigarette, and that gesture is way over in the left-hand corner of it. Anyway, I find it remarkable. Is the last WW2 picture we have up here. And it's by Robert Capa. And he liked to take portraits of soldiers. And I particularly like this one because it has, he says he has a mohawk for his esprit de corps.
Right.
But I like it that he has all this gear on, so it lets people like me have a better understanding of what they had to wear and what they were going through. And I love the lower angle; it makes it more heroic. Robert Kaplan knew exactly what he was doing when he photographed that Marine.
There's a great part in that show Band of Brothers that was on where before they parachute in, he's naming off all the gear.
All the gear.
He's got, and he's like, how did it expect me to jump with all this? You know? And it's true because if anyone been to airborne school, holy crap, you can't move.
Yeah.
It's
I can't
it's
imagine.
insane.
Yeah.
Vietnam.
How many people know this picture? Ah, okay. It's by a photographer named Don McCullen. And if you look at the contact sheets, you can see him walking up to this soldier. And this photograph is regarded as the best image to show the 1,000-yard stare, show the shell shock that soldiers get. But it's not the first. Some of the first ones are actually from the 1890s, and it shows people with this same look, this same stare, but they were shot as traitors. They were executed by their own people because of their shell shock. So that's completely changed now. And this is one of the photographs that helped that change. But again, it's by Don McCullen, who's probably one of the greatest photographers of the Vietnam era. And we were very lucky at our institution to own about 30 to 35 photographs by him. My favorites is rescues, people being soldiers helping soldiers, and the intensity of what's kind of happening here, I think, is very palpable in this picture, and I love it. But I think that this is probably the best photograph that he ever took. So titled "Marine Throwing a Grenade." It's Vietnam, and what we don't know from this picture is that this Marine was shot in that picture. He was shot in his other hand. So we don't know if this is before, after, during. We don't know if the bullet is in that picture. But the grenade being tossed is just as elusive as the beginning of the starting of a war. There are very few pictures of a grenade being tossed. I've seen a few other ones, and they are absolutely boring, not interesting pictures. But this one, because of the foreground, everything that's happening in it, all these verticals that happen, these three verticals mimic those three verticals that surround the guy in the subject, the frame that's taking the picture, are just things that make it better and better and better. Little things like there's a dark hole and a white hole. Composition that they support and help each other. Did McCullen see that when he was taking the picture? Probably not, but he may have chosen not to get rid of that because it did mirror the thing in the sky. Photographed in the Gulf War, and we have a photograph by him in the collection that is one of the most difficult pictures taken. It was banned in this country for years, and you all can Google it. It's Incinerated Iraqi by Don McCullen. By Ken Drecke. And he says that he became a photographer and he published pictures like Incinerated Iraqi to show people like his mom that what you see on TV is not what war is about. He's also pretty famous for saying, if you're strong enough to order it, you should be strong enough to look at it. It's like his pictures should not be banned because these are your decisions that led to this. So, that said, we have about 10 to 15 photographs by Ken Jarecki. I think he was an exceptional photographer. And he photographed the daily lives of the soldiers, which, again, I really, really like that picture. It's something that in the past, photographers didn't focus on, but now they're more and more and more interested is in that. One thing that I have a particular interest in, and as a curator in terms of conflict pictures, is bathing. Do you know how many pictures there are of soldiers bathing? Tons. So, because a soldier will go through great lengths, go, oh, I can take a bath there, and they haven't taken one in a month. So they're going to do whatever it takes to get to make it there. And it's a photographable thing. It's fun, it's human, everybody can relate to it. So Ken Jarecki's picture of a soldier taking a bath surrounded by sandbags is pretty iconic. But also as a non-military person looking at it, I look at it and think it's kind of ridiculous because there's nobody around it. You know, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. But how wrong am I, right? But again, these are all just the daily lives of the soldiers. This is a soldier reading a Bible. And this is a picture that you all can think about when you're going over your photography, because there's a light pointing right at the camera lens. So this is metered to avoid that, metered for the shadow. So this is a complex picture because of that light. The photographer knew that it would put this soldier in the silhouette. And probably waited to make sure that his face was in, because he knew that it was going to be this dark silhouette. And it's a soldier reading his Bible. Soldiers reading, writing letters home. One of the things that kills pictures, in my opinion, are tires. If you have a tire in a picture, it kills it. It's a trap. It traps your eye in the circle. And once your eye gets in the circle, it doesn't know how to get out of it. So tires can kill the pictures. But this one is a great exception. I think it works because it put it right smack dab in the middle. And the subject of what he's doing is actually interacting with the thing that's drawing your kind of drawing your eye in. And but I love the juxtaposition of the guy sleeping and the guy writing a letter home. And then this one just makes me uncomfortable seeing that much dust gets on soldiers sleeping in that situation just in that tiny little amount of time.
Can you speak a little bit about the camera that he was using?
So he's using a Hasselblad. So this is his incinerator Jarecki, and he shot that with a digital camera. Oh! No, I'm wrong. He shot that with on film, but with a 35 millimeter camera. And this is
talking about
taken
the
with a
incinerator
Hasselblad
Jarecki. If you want to see
Hasselblad is the
it,
kind of
just
camera
look
that
it
gets to
up.
Look down. Everything's backwards in it when you're taking the picture.
Too gross to
So
show
this
in
is
a
done on
video.
film.
Okay. Was that unusual at the time? Using
Yes, it was. And I had an interesting discussion with the photographer as we were, I was trying to acquire the incinerator Iraqi for the collection. And then we finally did, and then we were acquiring some of these. And he sent us the prints, and they were larger, flat, dull, uninteresting, digital inkjet prints. I emailed him back and was like, yeah, no, we as an institution, we like to collect things that are close to the negative. Meaning if you took that picture in 1990, we want a print from 1990. As close to the negative as possible. So that not enough time to change what's in the picture. Skip one. So this one is by a photographer named Cedric Durbahai. This was taken in the Congo? Republic of This is Nakunda. He was one on the world's most wanted list. At the time this was taken, we're interviewing Cedric, who looks kind of like me, but shorter and more timid. I'm like, you took this picture? and then I was just like, wait, you have Nakunda's number in your phone? But the FBI doesn't.
Wow.
So he was with Nakunda. Nakunda allowed Cedric to be there. Cedric set a list of types of pictures he wanted to get from Nakunda on the onset. Cedric said that at some point, Nakunda just turned around and said, okay, I'm done with you. Take him out. And Cedric, to that guy, said, no, I still haven't gotten my portrait yet. We want your portrait. Don't you want a portrait of you? And Nakunda agreed and like put his glasses on and was like take your stupid picture. And Cedric said again, no, I don't think that's what you want. Where do you greet people? And then Nakunda understood. And he went back to this place. Nakunda set this up. He got 2 guards to stand on either side of him. He took his cell phone out and put it on the table, went and borrowed somebody else's phone and put it there too. I do not know what that means. Put his glasses on and was like, take your picture. And Cedric once again said, no. I think you should have your glasses off. Don't you want people to be able to see your eyes? And Nakunda agreed, and this amazing picture is the result of it. So, but it's a photographer forcing the
Subject.
encouraging the subject to a comfort zone, and also a place where he understood how the picture would help him be depicted as a powerful man.
Can you explain who Nakunda is?
Nakunda was basically no, but Nakunda was a warlord in Africa, but he was also the local preacher. Every other photograph by Cedric is either of him being a warlord or him giving sermons. And it's hard to tell the difference between him and other times, except for who's listening. So they're fascinating pictures.
Wow. That is.
So this is by a Dutch-Danish woman.
German.
German. I can't pronounce her name.
I will post the information at the end of this video of all the artists or photographers.
But anyway, it's just it was a picture we saw and we found it charming and fun. We liked the idea of somebody walking around with a G.I. Joe in their backpack. That's how it ended up being our show. It was weird, interesting with the last group that was here. One of the soldiers, she was like, "Oh, I know that road. I've been there." And she was actually served about the same time that this picture was taken, which I thought was remarkable. There's another photograph that's kind of like it that came in the press about 5-6 years ago. It hit the New York Times because it's titled "Pink Boxers," and it was a soldier at his machine gun with his hot pink boxers on. It's because he was
Bathing or
showering, called it
whatever.
That's what
Skype.
Yeah. So anyway, we liked a little bit of humor, some levity, and all the mayhem that we were showing. And this is one of those pictures.
Can you explain what the designation printer Q imaging?
Oh, so the printer on the sheet that you're looking at, this was okay. This is interesting as curators trying to do an exhibition about conflict photography. We contacted her before, and she sends us to her licensor, which means we get a digital file. Like, yeah, no, we need to print. And like, what do you mean print? We need to hang something on the wall. He goes, oh, I don't know how to do that. So they emailed us their files, and we had them printed at Q Imaging. So it's just a record of, you know, how that picture was made. Sometimes the print on the wall by a famous photographer, Robert Frank, was printed by Lee Friedlander, and people want to know that. So right now, people may not be interested in that was printed by Q Imaging, but in 100 years, they might be.
And in regards to a print, was a print ever made before you asked?
No.
In that regard.
But it's published, but not a print.
So only ever existed digitally.
Yeah. And it was very common with the active photographers that we were corresponding with. They're like, what do you mean print? They just did not, it's not part of their world. It's not part of their world.
That's like using like old school
Yeah.
technology instead of like the technology now is so much better. Why would we want to go backwards?
Or like dialing in the phone.
Because it didn't
Yeah, exactly.
There was no need for them
This
to.
is-
Oh yeah, forget about that.
And lastly, it's a portrait by Louis Palou. And it's just a portrait right after a patrol. And I like it that the dirt is dirty on his picture.
The dirt is dirty.
So Louis Palou, he's an active correspondent today, you can look him up. These are all taken right inside the tent. The light right inside the tent.
Holy shit. I just realized that picture was taken where I served in Afghanistan. That was taken in Helmand province. That's where I was.
Yeah. So when we
Could have
had the
been you.
exhibition, this was the banner. This was the picture on the wall outside. So does anybody have any questions or comments about what we've seen here?
So that one.
Here's some information for Iwo Jima. Pause the video to read it. Then I'll show you information on the photos. You can pause the video here to read information on all the photos we just went through.
The ISO setting and that kind of stuff. How come that's not translated?
Well, we don't know what that information is.
Okay.
Most of that information is pulled from the XF information from the camera.
All right, and pause
The camera's
this.
telling all the computers what it did.
And
It's a
then
new technology. And,
you can
So is there like a
pause
time frame of
this.
like 1990 where?
way later than that, I would say 2010.
Really?
Well, from digital cameras. Popularity.
and you can pause this.
Well, that's a common right there.
Oh, an interesting thing about digital files and cameras.
And then you
know,
can
digital files
pause
have-
this.
have XF information. It's information we can add to the file. Well,
And just for fun,
Iraq.
Don
bad
Graves,
guys were putting secret
one of the
information
last
in
living
XF
members,
and just texting
survivors from
That's how
Iwo
they get
Jima.
information out. This is an XF information photograph.
99 years old, interviewed, and this photo was taken in April or May of 2024.
Now there's searches for that. Now they know to search for that. But in the beginning, it was a new